Today we ask the question, what is Chekhov's gun? Hey there, welcome to As the Crow Writes. My name is Britton Tyler. Here we have, as always, Jesse Fernandez. How are we doing over there, Jesse?
I'm doing great. I am really excited to talk about this because Chekhov's gun is, to me, one of the most important core principles of writing.
I just wanted to basically treat you as the expert and ask you. I don't actually implement the Chekhov's gun really in my writing at all. What is it and what do you think about it?
The man, the myth, the legend, Anton Chekhov, was basically a playwright in the late 1800s and also a short story writer. His most famous plays were The Cherry Orchard, Three Sisters, and The Seagull. And he came up with this idea that later was known as Chekhov's gun. Remove everything that has no relevance to the story. If you say in the first act that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third, it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fired, it shouldn't be hanging there. Basically, the concept came down to, if you're gonna have something in a story, it should have a purpose. At its most basic, I think that's what it means. A good example of this is Die Hard. Films tend to follow this path really well because Chekhov's gun makes for really clean writing. John's service pistol in the beginning becomes his pistol that he uses throughout the film. He has jet lag and he takes off his shoes to get rid of his jet lag, and then later there's a really intense scene where he has to walk over glass. His wife Holly gets a watch, and that becomes the downfall of the antagonist later down the road. Those are examples of Chekhov's gun coming into play of okay, we're going to introduce this thing in the beginning, and we're basically going to reward the audience for paying attention to these details. And that's one of the reasons that I like Chekhov's gun so much. It makes the world feel more interconnected. Now, I do think there are a lot of criticisms with Chekhov's gun, and I think a lot of them are valid. Ernest Hemingway was very critical of this idea. He felt like Chekhov's gun made stories feel too clean and made them feel too fake. Are you more in that camp, on the Hemingway camp, or are you more a Chekhov's gun fan? I'm interested to see your perspective on that.
Yes, I definitely am going to side with Hemingway on this one. Though I will say there's some element of this Chekhov's gun at play almost in everything, because it looks like he's trying to define proper foreshadowing, where if you have some element, and in this case he uses a physical object, that thing should play a role in the story to feel satisfying to the reader, watcher, whatever. I think there's good merit there, but to Hemingway's point, where I really resonate with what he's saying, is that the world isn't always that clean. And so if you're trying to convince the audience of relevance, that's one thing. If you want to convince them, though, of something that's a convincing world, where things just happen sometimes and you don't have an answer, where things can come and go, sometimes that is just the way life is, right? I think that is the world that we inhabit. Hemingway tried to probably capture that essence. And that's where I like to try to capture that essence in my writing. So yeah, you mentioned that Chekhov is a playwright, short story writer, whereas Hemingway is a novelist. So do you think that that is what's influencing their opinion on it? Is it the fact that, Hemingway actually is writing novels versus Chekhov?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I also think that is part of the reason why Chekhov's gun has grown in popularity. Market-friendly novels are getting shorter. And as things like Save the Cat, which is a famous screenwriting book, came out that are trying to force story writers to be cleaner and shorter, I think things like Chekhov's gun come more into play. Where in a novel, especially older novels, you could meander a lot more and get away with it. In things like cinema, like you mentioned, and in plays, and in short stories, you don't have that time. So every single element needs to come into play at least once, hopefully twice or three times. And like you mentioned, Hemingway writes much longer, more meandery books. He purposefully has two characters in one of his famous short stories that come up once in the beginning and then never come up again. And their only value is to add spice and lifelike quality to the story. So I think even in concept, Hemingway was against it. But yes, I do think that their mediums drastically affected their philosophies on this.
Okay, yeah, and it's interesting you bring up his two characters, because that immediately draws me to Tom Bombadil from Lord of the Rings. And I feel that Tolkien wanted to kind of capture this same essence as Hemingway, is what you're saying, that there needs to be a character and you, the reader, get to ponder the whole purpose behind this character. He's even quoted with saying, even in a mythical age, there must be some enigmas, as there always are. Tom Bombadil is one. That strikes a chord with me because I love mysteries to ponder in my writing and in other writings, so that I could theorize what it could have been, what it could be, and not necessarily get an answer. There's something very satisfying about a Chekhov's gun idea. On the flip side, there's a lot of satisfaction still to be had in that mystery. And Tom Bombadil kind of encapsulates that really well because he is like a direct opposition to the Ring. You get this setup of the Ring being this really dominating force, and Tom comes along and it completely goes against that. It doesn't affect him. And so you're left really scratching your head about the character and the Ring. It's really interesting, I think, to pull that.
This is one of the downsides to Chekhov's gun and one of the criticisms that I think is very legitimate. A lot of mysteries like Agatha Christie books and the Arthur Conan Doyle books are forced to go against Chekhov's gun specifically because if they followed it, the reader would be able to solve the mysteries too quickly. Red herrings are an example of when you can't follow Chekhov's gun. For those that don't know, red herrings are basically this idea where you are intentionally adding threads or characters in the story to mislead the reader into thinking that they know who the villain is, for instance, or who the victim is, but in reality, they're only there to throw off the scent. Now, that's a direct contradiction to Chekhov's gun because it's a piece of the story that has no purpose. Mysteries cannot follow Chekhov's gun and still work really well, but something like Die Hard, where it's an action movie and you're just kind of there for a popcorn flick, it works perfectly well. So I do think that Chekhov's gun is really great, but I think as much as I love it as a guiding principle, I think that's what it is in the end. It is a guiding principle.
You had mentioned red herring earlier, and that kind of goes into other ideas I was thinking about with Chekhov's gun, one being MacGuffins. How would you differentiate the two?
So MacGuffins to me are another example of how Chekhov's gun can go wrong if you're doing things for the wrong reasons. For those that don't know, MacGuffin is basically something in the plot that forces the antagonist and protagonist to cross paths. An example of one would be like the mother boxes from like the DC movies. They're kind of just analogous power, and you don't really know why the bad guy wants them. You don't really know why the good guy shouldn't have the bad guy get them, but you just know if they get them, it's bad. It's basically the writer being like, here's this thing that's important that we're going to continuously call back to give everything stakes and immediacy. But if you leave it there, you have a MacGuffin that has no purpose. It has no relevance to the characters. It has no relevance to the world. It's just there to be a magic conflict generator. And I think this is why Chekhov's gun gets a lot of criticism, is because it pushes the idea of MacGuffins. But yes, on the surface, Chekhov's gun is saying, make everything relevant. A MacGuffin falls into that, but that doesn't mean that that's good writing. It's just like step one of good writing. George Lucas very famously calls R2-D2 a MacGuffin, but MacGuffins are typically negative, but I think that's a great example of a MacGuffin. It's someone that everyone is trying to get. They're trying to get the plans that the princess sent, but it has plot relevance. It has character. It has purpose to theme and all of these different things. That is the example of taking a Chekhov's gun and making it into actual good storytelling and not just like checking off like, okay, this is relevant, we're good to go, let's move on. At the end of the day, it shows that these rules are not so fast and hard. Even something that I consider to be one of the core tenets of writing, a lot of writers don't even use. You don't even use. I don't think anyone should be tied down to what they think is so important, but I do think everyone should try the tools that are there. Some things might resonate with you, some things might not. For me, Chekhov's gun resonates a lot. It makes me write the stories that I want to write, but the moment that Chekhov's gun makes my story worse, it's out the window.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say try the different methods, see what works for you. Chekhov's gun really does work for you. The types of stories that I want to tell, it doesn't serve the purpose as well. Use it for yourself and see what you think. I think it can be a really good outline or guide even to take your story where it needs to go. And maybe you strip it back after you've completed the story. But hey, that's all part of the editing process. So take your time with your stories and have fun with them. But yeah, let us know if there are other stories that use Chekhov's gun, whether it's poorly or done really well. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, if you really like this video, check the one down below. You might like that one too.
And if you really like what you see, click here to subscribe.